Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Peter Birkett. I'm the Chief Executive of the University of Southampton Science Park, and it's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you here today to this, the opening of our latest building, number 5 Benham campus, and also to the Nucleus Technology Showcase event, which is taking place here all day. The Science Park has a tradition of supporting the growth of high technology companies, and it has been very successful over the last few years, with the result that the Science Park is just about full at this moment. So it is with great relief that I stand here today for the opening of this new building. And I hope that you'll be able to glimpse some of the facilities that are around you here that the Science Park fraternity will be benefiting from over the next few years. But the Science Park is much more than just labs and offices. It is a community, a vibrant entrepreneurial community. Some people would describe that as an innovation ecosystem. And that innovation ecosystem is very much exemplified by the Nucleus event. I hope you will find time, if you haven't already, to go to visit the exhibition, where you will see examples of innovation and technology emerging from the local region. And I hope that you'll also take advantage of the very exciting talks that will be going on throughout the day, both here and in the workshop area. Our speaker, our keynote speaker this morning, needs very little introduction. He was Secretary of State for the Business, Innovation and Skills in the coalition government. But some of you may not know that he also has a number of visiting professorships at UK universities, and is also a director of a startup company in a social enterprise area. With credentials like that, I can think of no better person to come to give the keynote address at this event. So I'd like you to welcome the Right Honourable Sir Vince Cable.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a genuine honour to be asked to come here and to be able to pay tribute to the university and its commercial partners and the people who've made this possible. I did feel very warm when I was asked to come, and I think what it came down to was that I discovered that here there were people practising what I preached in government, that things are actually happening, that the rhetoric is giving rise to something real. I think the nub of the problem that we wrestled with in my years in government, in which you were engaging with at a practical level, is a sort of basic dilemma for the UK, that on one level we, I think indisputably, have world-class science, and whether you look at it at the top level with Nobel Prizes or the number of cited articles in the most reputable journals, British science punches well above its weight. But most of the metrics suggest that Britain has been less good at innovation, actually translating this scientific excellence understanding into commercial application. We're pretty good, and there's some wonderful companies here doing great things, but we underperform relative to other countries in relation to innovation. And a great deal of time and thought has gone into the question about how do you create a system, I think you used the phrase a moment ago, an ecosystem which actually makes innovation happen and flourish. There are several elements to it, and I've seen most of these elements at work in the exhibition here. The first is you've got to have the physical space, so you have the science park, and then within that you have the incubators. You have to have a good intellectual property regime which protects the innovators, and also when we're dealing with university spin-offs ensures that there's a proper distribution of rewards and property protection between the university itself and the entrepreneur. We need you have to have a proper tax system, So hence we have R&D tax credits, we have a capital gains tax system that provides proper support for entrepreneurs through their expanding company. You need other things too. You need a proper institutional arrangement so that there's a link between the kind of isolated entrepreneur and people out there in the market. You know, being an innovator can often be very lonely. And we studied this hard in government and looked particularly at the German model, the Fraunhofer system. And one of the things I introduced on the back of that was the system of catapults, which is now spreading in the UK, where particularly advanced manufacturing, space application, alternative energy base, new digital systems. And I think that idea of having an interface between the individual entrepreneur and the market, where people can come for help and advice, is proving a very important one. So those are all elements of the ecosystem. One of them that I don't think we've yet got right, and is particularly important, is making sure that there is an adequate supply of both equity and loan capital for entrepreneurs as they progress from startup to expansion to major expansion. The so-called value of death problem, much more acute in the UK than in the US, but we have made some progress on that, and you know, the biomedical catalyst and various other innovations, support for angel investors, I think that is gradually coming together. So I think there are various elements, and what we, I think, see in a place like this is the elements of that innovation story being put together. And if it is put together, and it's put together in the right combination, then the UK becomes a world leader. I think that the general conclusion I drew, having overseen all this for 5 years, is that you need just the right kind of balance between private sector entrepreneurs, business people, and the business mindset, and government. Government, I mean, in the wider sense, so I know universities are not government, but public sector in the wide sense, where the public sector doesn't walk away, it's linked in, and the way that Southampton University clearly is, but isn't heavy-handed. If we look at real success stories of innovation, I mean, the whole internet didn't fall out of the sky. I mean, it happened because some rather entrepreneurial people in the US Department of Defense began to see how this could be used. So it is getting this link right between people in universities, people in government, and the entrepreneur, and making sure that exactly the right balance is struck. And I think we're pretty close to that in the UK. But when we look to the future, and coming out of that conclusion, I think there are two things we need and have to safeguard, and which are currently, I think, under some threat. I mean, one of them is to have very strong universities, and the other is to have a very strong, properly supported business community. Now, the issue with universities is, we've had in recent years massive expansion, both quality and quantity, and universities are properly funding. And some of the rather painful decisions we made at the beginning of the coalition years contributed to that. It made my party in particular rather unpopular, but it has meant that 6 years later universities are reasonably secure financially. But there is a cloud on the horizon. If the Brexit negotiations are not handled properly, and I hope they will be, but if they're not handled properly, universities will be in some difficulty, because there is an enormous reliance on collaborative research, an enormous degree of mutual exchange of students and staff, very high proportion of university staff from the European Union countries, many of whom are quite insecure at the moment. They don't know what their status is going to be. And potentially, in the worst case, the loss of 10 to 15% of income from the loss of European students. So there's a big agenda there, and it's complicated, and it's got to be got right, because this epoch-making change in the UK. I mean, it could work out. I'm not here to make a political rant about Remain and Brexit. It could work out, but if it doesn't work out, universities could face very considerable difficulties. And I think on the other side, the business community, at the moment the business environment in the UK is a pretty favourable one. We've got large numbers of startups, we've got plenty of evidence of business growth, the business environment is surprisingly robust given the uncertainties that currently hang over us. But it is a bit fragile, and we are going to have to get through this period of uncertainty hanging over business and continue to ensure that Britain is an attractive place to do business in. There's one particular area where I think we have a continuing problem, and when I left office I think it was one aspect of our work that we haven't made as much progress in as I would have liked, and this was on the financing of business, and particularly innovative business, because British banking, which has been through this enormous earthquake, will only lend against physical collateral, and very difficult for companies which trade on ideas to get capital from the banking system, and equally difficult to get risk capital as well. So how we bridge that problem is tricky and an unresolved issue, and I have great admiration for the British entrepreneurs who do manage to crack this. One very, very small contribution I'm currently trying to make, with the help of some of you in this room, is to establish a bank in Hampshire, which we will call a community bank, which is specifically to take local deposits and recycle them to local businesses based on the German Sparkassen system. We've raised some capital from indeed the universities and from local councils, and hopefully if we can get clearance by the regulator, it will be operational fully next year. But it's a small bit of a much bigger picture, which is how we address this fundamental problem about how entrepreneurs, ambitious people with ideas, raise the capital to take their business from one stage to the next. And I think that should be a major focus of policy. But I just, again, want to thank you for inviting me. Congratulate the university in particular, but everybody who was responsible for making this building happen and the activity within it. And it's very clear that on this industrial estate, this science park, there are some really great companies doing great work. And it is a genuine privilege to be asked to come here and talk to you and to do the official launch. So thank you very much.
Well, that just leaves me really to thank Sir Vince for coming to open the building, the Nucleus Exhibition. You can see we're going to pull the cord in a second. And in particular, Vince was my Secretary of State as a Vice-Chancellor, and as you gathered, he nicely balanced the needs of universities, but more importantly, really the needs of innovation and business. And I think, so I think I'm grateful to him actually very much for his support and for being here with us today. The Science Park, of course, is an extremely important part of the university's enterprise agenda, and it does allow us to play a role in helping grow a vibrant innovation ecosystem as a prominent part of the economy. And we do this in all sorts of ways. We obviously have our Set Squared partnership to help the enterprise collaboration, which I'm delighted was ranked #1 globally last year, which is something to say, I think, against the US system, again, as Vince was saying. So I think without more ado, we come to the opening phase of this, and I'll invite Sir Vince to actually pull the cord. Thank you.
This is sometimes embarrassing.